tell you a story. It's official, old buddy. Well, has been.
What are you talking about, man? You're Rick Dalton. Don't you forget it.
Here I come.
Smooth lead.
You're goddamn right.
On July 26th, in a town of make-believe, things are about to get real.
Charlie's gonna dig you.
Damn it.
Once upon a time in Hollywood.
Welcome back to the Couch Command. My name is Keith Hayward. I am the host of the Couch Command podcast on popgeeks.com. I'd like to thank ahead of time Brian Klein, the Sonic Clang, who produces each episode, and I don't think enough. I much appreciate his time. Also want to thank Eileen, who hosts our podcast. She's the owner of popgeeks.com. And lastly, I never think this other guy, the Starcadian, who makes our intro and outro music. You can find his music if you search Starcadian. I'm pretty sure he's on Starcadian.com. But also with me today, I have DJ. Say hi, DJ, so they know what your voice sounds like.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for having me, as always. Always a pleasure to hang out with the fellas.
Right on. And also I have with us MJ.
Howdy. Thanks for having me back.
Also returning is Lobster Manic Reviews, Mr. Isaac.
Hey, excited to do some. I wanted to come up with a cute alliteration, but I'm blanking. I want to do a take on Tarantino, but I didn't come
that
up
works.
with anything.
I think that hit.
Talking Tarantino. There you go. Talking Tarantino.
We're talking Tarantino as we do our review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And Isaac, you could always take the Sherry O'Terry voice and do it. And now it's time for Tarantino talk.
Okay, to start, I think it's a good idea to give like our place in life with Quentin Tarantino. What was your first experience with him, and how has he been through your life? I'll go first. I was in high school, and feels like this event, like the trailers were really interesting, and I didn't know what was going on. My film and the people who were in plays, the art people, people who were in plays. I forget, there's a high school name for those kind of people.
Theater kids.
Theater people. Yeah, they're like, oh, you have to go see Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, and we all went, and it was amazing. My first time, it was it was I describe it as a good Star Wars / Matrix moment, where the whole cinema landscape changed afterwards, and you had seen something for the first time that would affect every movie afterwards, and you're kind of just blown away by how it was never there before, or barely there. Where when I came out of it, I was I felt like I just watched an episode of Seinfeld on a cinematic scale, where everyone's just kind of talking normally, where people in movies definitely didn't do that, and I was just swept away by the dialogue and the pacing and the coolness, and I was just what the hell just happened? And then
more drugs and violence.
Yeah. I've been doing lots of video essays on him to find out more of what do I think of Quentin Tarantino, and I do think that the reason why his dialogue is different and it is like Seinfeld is that him growing up, he watched movies and television, and I'm guessing television maybe helped shape the way he thinks about what dialogue should be versus the filmmakers before him who were trained off of theater and plays and movies, and that's why all of those movies kind of talk the same. And then the new generation of Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith came along, raised off television, where you're always swept away on a daily basis by normal people talking about normal things, and then we get Pulp Fiction on a new scale. So, DJ, what's Quentin Tarantino to you?
No, I'm there with you in terms of I remember Pulp Fiction being that, damn, this is raw. You know what I mean? This is elevated. This is definitely its own style. It's unapologetic. It definitely takes you there as far as the subject matter, the cool factor, the characterizations. Sam Jackson and Travolta are just a great team. The chemistry for sure. But I think I might have been late to the Tarantino appreciation until like I'm almost embarrassed to say because I feel like this is so much later, but it was really Kill Bill, which was like the amalgamation of like all the things I love. Everything I loved in the Kill Bills, you know what I mean? Which, well, whether it was Volume 1, which was more Eastern oriented, and then Volume 2, which was more Western oriented, to the point where there was like a whole ass anime short, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I feel like Pulp Fiction was like the marker on the map, and then Kill Bill really made me go, oh damn, this is all the things, you know what I mean? Then obviously you have like the other works. Reservoir Dogs, all that stuff. But yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, definitely a love letter to the 70s.
Yeah, I went Pulp Fiction, then back to Reservoir Dogs, and like, yeah, it was just something in the world changed when he hit. MJ,
Yep.
what's your feel with Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah, I was in the same spot as you guys. I had never really heard of him until everybody started talking about this Pulp Fiction movie. Oh my god, it's amazing, And I finally watched it and I listened to the soundtrack and I'm like, god damn, this is a pole setter. This movie, it did mark a significant shift in the way movies were made, because pretty much all the movies for the rest of the 90s were just clamoring to hit the same heights that Tarantino hit in Pulp Fiction.
To the point where I've avoided watching some movies because I was like, "Oh, you're just trying to be like Quentin Tarantino." Like,
yeah, like 3 Days in the Valley and the whole resurgence of Elmore Leonard in the late '90s, which, and you know, Tarantino did direct one of the Elmore Leonard movies with Jackie Brown, which was another adaptation of Leonard.
Everything that Guy Ritchie did.
Yes,
He owes a lot to Tarantino, a lot.
Sorry, I would like interject with that.
Oh yeah, easily.
I'll have to look up more Elmore Leonard stuff because he is the father of Justified, which everyone needs to watch.
Yeah, Leonard was a big Western writer before that, but he was also big into crime noir. So like Out of Sight with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, Get Shorty, another one with Travolta in it.
Yep, both those I've unfairly decided not to watch either Out of Sight and Get Shorty because I could tell how much they're trying to be like Quentin Tarantino. But I've been trying to take up my snob goggles more these days, and maybe I should give him a chance.
I really liked Get Shorty. I know a lot of people like Out of Sight. I thought it was a little too bland for me, but they also tried to have like a mini Elmore Leonard universe because Michael Keaton's character from Jackie Brown showed up in Out of Sight too. So
cool.
Like, oh great, now we're gonna have an Elmore Leonard cinematic universe.
Please, Justified.
And and then obviously Tarantino was quiet for a while after he started getting big into stuff with Robert Rodriguez, and then he showed up with Kill Bill and like, oh hell yeah, man, now we're going. But then he came out with Death Proof on the back end of that Grindhouse duology that he did with Rodriguez, and I just kind of wrote Tarantino off for a while because I just thought he was just being masturbatory on screen for just all the crap he wanted to put on screen.
All right.
I didn't really come back around to Tarantino until I watched the extended cut of Hateful Eight that he put out on Netflix, and that kind of brought me back around. I finally watched Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained because I'd avoided watching both of those until I watched Hateful Eight, and that finally kicked me in the head and said, oh, you're missing out, get back to it. So I went and saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the theater, and yeah, I've been back on board with the Tarantino since, so it's been very interesting wading back through his entire filmography and starting to absorb everything that he's absorbed, and he's been trying to share with the whole world through his movies since then.
And he's got one movie left in him, he says. So
he says, yeah.
I think he'll stick to it, and I see a hunger in him to do television.
I'd be fine with that. Yeah, based off of how well he did with turning Hateful Eight into the miniseries on Netflix, I would be down with that. If he did like an 8-part series here and there.
So he'll still be making Tarantino stuff, but it'll be like television, and then maybe just television long movies. Isaac, what's your feel on Tarantino?
I think Tarantino is an iconoclast. He's like the spirit of the 90s indie film scene, and he's probably, out of all the filmmakers that came from that scene, the one who's like kind of endured as like a staple. Like Kevin Smith dropped off hard.
God.
I have no nice things.
Dude was my god. He was my personal god, and damn, he just fucking crashed hard.
He
lost his way. I'll say that, but
say that
again.
He lost his way. I mean, he started making that mainstream fluff in the middle of the '90s, like that one with Ben Affleck and. We don't speak of Cop Out.
Ooh.
In his defense, that was the one he didn't write the script for. He only directed it. But
I'll say really quickly with him, like he's earned so much goodwill for me from Clerks and Mallrats that like he can kind of fuck up for the rest of his career, and like he still has Clerks and Mallrats with me for the rest of my life. So
Jersey Girl was his downfall, but then Zack and Mary.
You guys are being so generous. I'm surprised you didn't bring up fucking Red State or the Walrus movie.
I'm gonna say I think I would have stepped the bat for Red State. I'm pretty sure I like that.
No.
Yeah. Like
I'm gonna tell you.
My only strange thing with Red State was how much it didn't seem like he directed it at all. Like there's so much about it that was like, this is you? Like, all right. And then also, I'll admit a bias because I one time in LA I became friends with Kyle Gallner, who's a star of it. So
nice.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But like I think I can't tell how much I've been overly biased. But no, like even before I met him, like I liked it. But like I said, that'd be an interesting one to talk about because like I was kind of almost put off by how much. Wait, and Kevin Smith did this because nothing about like how the shots and the story, the pacing, editing, everything was like. Are you sure you didn't have like someone help you with this? I don't know, whatever.
I mean,
I see.
Is that you know who's the other biggest fan of that movie besides you, right, Keith?
Who?
Tarantino.
Oh, cool.
No, Smith screened it for Tarantino, and Tarantino is sitting because it featured Michael Parks as one of Tarantino's favorite actors, and Tarantino's had him in quite a few of his own movies. And Tarantino was sitting there watching with Smith. They were both stoned out of their gourd, and he's like, "Man, you made a movie for me. This is amazing."
I just don't think it's like a very good, horror movie. I don't think it's a very good, like, the fear of religious fundamentalism. I mean, Michael Parks is good in it, but like, just like such a
Michael Parks is the only good thing of that and Tusk.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, he gets like, but like Tarantino is like the best at like finding diamonds in the rough, finding talent for people who were looked over and not. He's revived so many careers. It is like such a prestige thing where it's like, oh, you got a part in a Tarantino movie, and Tarantino seems to have a great sense of like writing characters for actors.
Quickly, yoga hosers. Oh my god. Oh my god.
The less said about the ass spelunking Nazi dwarfs, the better.
I cried pure vinegar.
And then who was the other one from, like, I guess Robert Rodriguez? He's still going, but I feel like he's more a work for hire than he's like an auteur. He's like the guy you go to like. He's like that whatchamacallit, that director not Neil Blomkamp, but like the dogs. Yeah, he's like Neil Marshall, and that like if you want to do something, but that looks somewhat impressive, but you don't have a lot of money, you get Robert Rodriguez, and he'll scrap it together and put out a finished product. It won't be super memorable. It won't feel like auteur cinema, but God damn it, Robert Rodriguez will get it done.
Once again, he's also
No, I apologize. Here's my big thing about Robert Rodriguez, because you have to understand. Desperado is like one of my favorite fucking movies.
I was about to say,
oh yeah, man.
And like the 0 to 100 between even back with El Mariachi, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Which you could argue that Desperado is basically kind of like a retelling reboot, but sequel to Mariachi. But you take that and then you transition that to like Spy Kids 3D and the identity. I mean, obviously different genres altogether, but I couldn't even tell you what a Robert Rodriguez film kind of looks like past certain things. Like I like Sin City a lot. Machete is its own thing. Yeah. But then you get something like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and bro, that shit was a ball punch for me. Like it was a far departure from like Desperado. So I'm just saying like Robert Rodriguez is all over the place in terms of like style for me.
Yeah, and quality.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico? Are you Mexican or are you Mexicant?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I laughed so hard at the theater when he said that. I was
Oh
dying.
my god.
Did not see that line coming.
But you have to understand, like everybody else was like, "Oh, that's a lie." I was with my Latino homies, and they facepalm at that shit. They're just like, "Son of a bitch."
They didn't like it.
Were they like? Did they have their hands in the air, clenched, saying, "You are the chosen one, Rodriguez"?
I mean, it wasn't like fist pumping, but okay, it's like the equivalent of like being black and hearing the joke, "Hey, why are black people so tall? Because they're Negroes." You're like,
Whoa.
and you're like, I don't
Slap
hate you,
forehead.
but you're sitting there just like, let me just finish my giant fucking soda real quick because it's fine.
Oh my god. That's a very good joke.
I've never heard that joke, and I can go the rest of my days imagining I never did. Oh my god.
and your life is
But yeah, Rodriguez also, and he only has in 3 movies, Sin City, Desperado, El Mariachi. You've won a lifetime pass from me. Like that is, you can now fuck up the rest of your life. Those 3 movies are enough.
With that?
but yeah, it's funny. Like I was like the difference in quality, because like when he did his episode of Mandalorian, everybody was like, "Oh man, that was awesome." Then he comes in and derpifies the hell out of Boba Fett.
And let's not forget the weird collaboration. The Battle Angel Aelita, who I still don't understand why people pretend to have a fandom for that fucking movie.
It was okay. It wasn't as good as the anime, but it was okay for a Western interpretation of it.
I give it. It was pretty good.
I was just about to say, like, I don't think Alita is as bad as people think it is, but it definitely was a passion project as opposed to, oh yeah, the fans want to see this, or there's an audience for this. Like, if you are a fan of anime, or at least a fan of interpretation, it wasn't bad at all, but there wasn't really a market for it. But if you watched it, you wouldn't say like, "Oh, this is fucking horrible." You'd probably think like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely anime."
So Isaac, let me put it this way. I mean, you look at what they did with Battle Angel Alita. At least that translated far better did than M. Night taking Last Airbender.
I think that's why. I think that's because like it came out as a decent ass movie. That's and that doesn't usually happen when you do an anime movie. I think that's.
I will say this: like, even if the execution was fairly competent, the fact that it felt like it had 5 separate acts and 6 story arcs jammed in incoherently. Someone who browsed through the manga, and I was just kind of like, all right, why are we going to rollerball and then we're going back to the original, first story arc, and this did, and then it ends with that stupid cliffhanger with whatchamacallit. Who was the actor? I want to say it was
Christoph Waltz.
No, it wasn't. Christoph.
No, the big bad at the end. Who was that? Yeah, they had a A-list actor.
Was it Topher Grace or someone else?
Oh god, it wasn't that bad. And I'm sorry for anybody who's a fan of Topher Grace, but he could fall off a bridge and we'd all be better for it.
Yikes!
Sorry,
he mad.
I just don't like him. Anyway, I can't stand Predators, but anyway.
Wow.
But all right. So back to Tarantino. I feel like he's the one out of like the '90s boom who stayed the most consistent. All his movies are watchable. It's interesting because like on Film Bro Twitter, you could argue that like someone like Terrence Malick or Paul Thomas Anderson is like maybe the better filmmaker. But I think one of the reasons why Tarantino is because he's so imitated and he's so parodied and so influential in culture. I mean, to this day, you still see Once Upon a Time gifs of like Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen. He's just like a genius at like taking trash and making highbrow art from it. And there is no one his equal. My only complaint about Tarantino is I wish he played in more genres. Like I'm so disappointed we never got the Tarantino Star Trek project, or just like a Tarantino sci-fi movie. Like, what would that look like?
I will say this. One thing
I
I tend to really appreciate about Tarantino is I feel like the one thing I love about Hollywood, if there is such a thing anymore, is that grandeur of larger than life. And Tarantino always feels, which is ironic because Tarantino doesn't play by the rules, but he is that Jay-Z where he could threaten retirement for years, never do it, and you're still able to anticipate his movies, which I feel like, there's a few directors in the game where you anticipate that director's movie. Tarantino's absolutely one of those because, I mean, again, most of the marketing is the seventh film of Quentin Tarantino, the eighth film of Quentin Tarantino. Like, you can count that, and you're just like, yeah, hell yeah, You may anticipate a James Cameron movie, but at this point, I think the guy's brilliant, don't get me wrong, but he's so full of his own ideas that it kind of becomes like, wait, how long ago was the last Avatar? 20 years ago? Cool.
When you said if there is such a thing anymore, because I think this movie kind of touches on that, like ends of eras. What do you mean by feeling like there's no such thing as Hollywood anymore?
No, that's a great question, bro. Like, it's the stuff that I learned to, it's that Tinseltown, the stuff that I tend to appreciate on a certain scale. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying celebrityism and thinking that you're better than anybody should be a thing, but there was such a mystique in terms of Hollywood/Hollywood land where celebrities were an enigma. The stories that revolve around them was more hearsay and more legend and lore mixed with the reality of what it is. And don't get me wrong, like many stories of like, hey, I discovered this person off of Hollywood and Vine. Probably not true, but it makes for a great story. You know what I mean? Where now a celebrity, quote unquote, doesn't exist, again, for better and for worse. But that feel of, oh, did you see Sharon Tate? Oh my God, that's Sharon Tate. That whole feelness to anticipation of a new Hollywood movie. Like, everything's such a well-oiled machine where there's so much content. Again, pros, more work, more projects. Cons, people are rarely unanimously watching the same thing unless it's a viral thing, unless it just happens to catch the wave of the algorithms. There's like several shows on Netflix, for better and for worse, that I just wouldn't have watched if it just wasn't like trending. You know what I mean? So just that feel of, you used to have to read a tabloid just to try to see a glimpse of, hey, that was Michael Jackson's possible pinky outside of his limo. That was amazing. So just that feel.
And now you encounter Michael Jackson every single day, every hour when he tweets, like, what he's doing, and you can I remember like someone mentioning like the advent of Twitter and the quote was, and you can convene directly with Ice-T himself. And it's like, yeah, I guess that is a little, we lose something of that, the mystique of the distance of like celebrity and like,
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, I just saw something that kind of reminded me of that. So I went down this weird rabbit hole about like the Disney Wish Super Cruiser, and on the Disney Wish Super Cruiser they have like an Avengers themed whatchamacallit, like an Avengers themed restaurant, and it's like a dinner theater experience. And in the dinner theater experience, they actually like filmed like a movie sequence with like Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Anthony Mackie is the Falcon, and he's like quipping about chicken tenders and whatnot. And they have this whole thing, and on one hand it's impressive, on the other hand it's sort of like, oh Jesus Christ, like is this what celebrity is now, that you're just locked into this fucking forever Disney contract where it guarantees like 12 fucking 100 appearances over across of several media. So Anthony Mackie, he seems like a really nice guy, but he's got to turn in as Captain America to quip about the chicken tenders.
Oh no, that's a real thing?
Yes, it's a real
The actual actors?
Yes.
Oh no. Ouch.
So if I can touch on that real quick, and that's kind of the point, because again, there's the pros and cons in terms of celebrities not being celebrities anymore, but popularity, TikTok stars and influencers, they're hot one minute, not the next. And you're filled with all these people who are popular, and not to make it that kind of topic, but the certain type of physique can get way more traction than any type of hard work nowadays. So it's so fleeting to even appreciate the stardom. And, the cons of that is, celebrities back in the days, like you really can't do it anymore because cell phones, but, they may have a little bit more push in terms of, when Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say a dumbass cheesy line like "I'll be back," it was like, he said the thing because that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Look forward to an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. celebrities are a dime a dozen where I have to literally do homework to even know who's in things. Like, if you ever ask your buddy, oh, what else has he been in? And then your buddy's able to laundry list it or not at all. And then you have to look it up like, oh, they were in that. There's just so much input. You know what I mean? So going back to even like your example as far as celebrities doing marketing, because Disney and Marvel literally changed the game where the El Cap here in Hollywood or here in LA is basically the new Grauman. If you didn't know any better, that is where premieres are the thing versus the historical landmark, which is the Chinese theater. And I miss that mystique. I just really miss that power of looking forward to a movie and not having to know, like, oh yeah, by the way, sequels 2, 3, and 4 are already planned. I'm like, bitch, I haven't even seen the first one.
And then also, I was talking to MJ the other day about, well, it's like now, like giant celebrities can make giant movies you've never even heard of, like, because like the problem, there's once we get into the movie, which we should get into soon. The problem with like great movies I found lately is like there's not much to say because. Like when it's something shitty, like I've had some of the most fun podcasts and have talked about so much. But when it's so great, you're just kind of like, oh, that was good. No, that scene was good too. And so I was thinking like the next podcast we do should be something that's really bad, such as something that like pretty much no one's heard of somehow. Have you guys heard of a movie called Dragon Blade?
I don't think I have.
It's starring Jackie Chan, John Cusack, and Gerard Butler, and it's a massive epic. Of Chinese and Roman soldiers in battle, and no one's heard of it.
Is that a Chinese production?
I'm not sure. And then also, it's jaw-droppingly like blow your brain out the back of your head, bad and hilarious. Like there's like this scene of this one guy who's just like on this ledge, going hysterical, and like holding his child, and he's like going, and they throw themselves off, and it's like in normal world that'd be like a awesome dramatic scene, but you can tell that somehow something went wrong and everybody knows what's going on and they're just freaking going nuts in the movie and no one's heard of it and I think it'd be worth talking about.
8 years old. It's a Chinese production and Adrian Brody was in it too.
Adrian Brody, yes. Maybe that's what I thought instead of Gerard Butler.
Well, all I can say is though, don't consider abandoning the Tarantino talk too quickly. I was looking forward to hopefully having an excuse to finally see Jackie Brown and Reservoir Dogs, since I have not seen either of those.
I'd be all for Tarantino.
Raz Dogs.
We should talk about something bad sometime because that makes for a lot of fun discussion.
But so what is the general impression of this film, though? Do you think this is the best Tarantino movie? Because like the one thing I think is really interesting about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is I think it's his sweetest movie. Like this is the closest we've gotten to like a Tarantino Richard Linklater hangout film, in that like outside of the end, there's not much violence. It's just kind of like hanging out in this era and this like spectrum of Hollywood, which isn't quite making it, but just kind of like being like this sort of like B-level guy, because like Rick Dalton isn't like when you think of like the actor stereotype of like, you know, oh, he's on hookers and drugs and abusing people and he's drunk, you know, he's drunk, but he never like crosses that line to be like an abusive character. He's just kind of like fun and pitiable, but you kind of root for him because like well, you know, he's not an 100% awful person, but you know, he's like the sad sack that you could kind of feel bad for.
He's relatable enough. He's relatable enough because he is a byproduct of that era, 100%, down to the smoking commercial. But go ahead.
I was gonna say like going around like going off that, and then we go around the table of like our general feelings about the movie. My general feeling on the movie, I almost want to say it's the best, but I'm not going to do that. There's a lot of thinking I have to do to make that call. But like to me, it seems like where a lot of Tarantino movies are like the best rock show or the best punk show that you've ever experienced, and like, you know, it's just rowdy as hell and you'll never forget it. This was like Tarantino's symphony, where it was beautiful. It felt like him completely. It felt robust and full. And I do love it. And like the craft is completely always on point. It's alive. I didn't feel any lost moments. Something I've been wanting to talk about ever since I first saw it in the theater was the experience of watching it and not knowing really who the Manson family were.
How can you not like even if you're
Right.
not super like historical? I feel like Charles
Right.
Manson is like such a huge thing in culture that like you just get him
With
through
our
osmosis.
generation, you'd be amazed
I've been
how much
doing-
it drops off after our generation, man.
I've been doing research on that to find out, why didn't I know? And like throughout time, it's just like wherever I've been, whoever I've been around, you've never gone in depth in it. All it is someone says the term Manson family. So like all I know is like for all I knew was like some guy, his wife, and his children killed some people. I'm like, yeah, Manson family. And that's all I knew. And so when the movie starts happening and like as I was experiencing it, I could feel this kind of like wistful sadness around Margot Robbie's character, and I could not tell at all why it was happening. I was very confused. It was beautiful. I was like, why are they?
That is the most interesting. Like, I think you're
Yeah,
probably
like
the only person in the planet who
Yes.
like was able to tell, but did not know the historical context.
And then like she goes to see her own movie, right? And then like, so I thought she was lying. I thought she was pretending. She's like, because like the woman on screen isn't her. So I'm just like, okay, she's just really into this actress, and she snuck her way in, acting like she's this actress. And then why is this like shot so sentimentally? All right,
Well,
okay.
that's the best thing about this movie. There's so much context around
Yeah.
90% of what you see on the screen that you're just going to be like, okay, what am I missing?
Yeah, and then he goes to
If you take the movie at
Manson
face
family
value,
farm. Oh, go ahead.
right? I mean, if you take the movie just as it is at face value, yeah, it's a good, solid movie. It's one of the more middle tier Tarantino movies, but once you actually get into all the ancillary details and every reference he shoves into this movie, it's just a cornucopia of late 60s, early 70s Hollywood history.
And love. And like you get to the farm, the ranch, and like there's like this menace feeling. I'm like, why are we feeling scared around children? What's happening here? And then he leaves. I'm like, okay. And then like the ending hits. I'm like, whoa. I mean, he just really wanted to beat these kids. All right.
What's interesting was about the Spawn family, or the Spawn ranch that the Manson family was holed up in.
Mm-hmm.
Tarantino intentionally shot that so it had the feel of Toby Hopper's first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He wanted you to get that eerie feeling walking around there.
And then like all the way up to the end, I didn't get it. Where all of a sudden, like, you know, they put the Manson family and this Manson like on the screen. And while I was reading, I was like, huh, you know. Kind of reminds me of the Manson family. Oh, well. And then, like, I left the theater. And then, like, later, you know, I was being, holy shit, this is what's going on. So that was my fun experience of just being completely oblivious as to why there was this weird menace and ferocity at the end, and then finding out later.
Well,
so
that was like probably the funnest subversion that, like, you know, you have the Manson family, or you know, you're expecting a horrible tragedy. You're expecting it to be like vaguely tasteless because it's Tarantino. But then
is that what you guys were feeling? Because
yeah.
like if you did know, were you guys anticipating the final murder?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I was expecting to, like, that's the brilliant subversion of the movie. Is that like you're expecting it? You're like this sunset era, this idealism of the Hollywood that it was supposed to be, and the shadow of the Manson family, and the idea is that like they kind of like, you know, bring that sentimentalism to like the horrible reality of like the late 60s, early 70s, and all the sort of chaos that came in that era. But then Tarantino subverts it by, you know, hey, let's not go to Sharon Tate, let's go to Click Dalton's, and then he, through the power of cinema, just like he did with Hitler and the antebellum South, he tears into it with all the creative, imaginative, gory glory that he's famous for, and then it ends with the title screen, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and what we've been watching, just like Inglourious Bastards, is a fairy tale.
Nice. And really quickly, when you said the sunset era, I've been wanting to say this metaphor ever since, like, I've been watching like lots of essays and interviews and whatnot, and like there was this weird, understandable complaint, but I think misunderstood complaint that Margot Robbie, Sharon Tate, didn't have enough lines, and I was like, she didn't need it because there was something about her that was, she felt like the sun in the sky of this movie. Like,
Yeah,
Agreed.
she
She was completely the presence of whether you knew the historical reference or not. She was absolutely the feel or the heart without needing to say much, because you got to see through her eyes. I mean, even her watching her own movie was definitely the innocence of that era. Then her being pregnant, a reflection of like even like the swinger culture and like how everyone's just kind of fucking everyone, and like everyone's doing drugs and everyone's all whatever. Like she was definitely like a force on screen, which is a testament of execution, but also just like I think I read somewhere like the real life Sharon Tate's sister was like driven to tears just from her presence alone.
And I guess like most people were anticipating like I said, she felt like this sun glowing over the movie, and like if you know what's going on, you're waiting for that sunset, and then the movie says, "Hey, in this fairy tale world, the sun never sets." And
the charming ideal of like a movie star who just like goes to a movie theater in the middle of the day just to watch people react to their performance. Like I don't think I've ever heard like a story about that in the modern era of like a modern actor just like going in just to see like how people react.
Is a slight take on something that Quentin Tarantino actually did, because like that's a story that actually Quentin Tarantino actually experienced, where he wrote True Romance, and then he was on a date, and he took the woman to the movie, and then he was like, wait a second, I wrote the movie. Hey, could I get in for free? And that's what that came from. And then they're questioning him. They're like, yeah, can we see some ID? Are you really him? And then that's when people started taking pictures of him outside the theater, and that's where that came from. DJ, awesome. What's your feel? What was your experience of seeing this movie? And thoughts, feels.
No, I appreciate you. Okay, so the question of whether or not it's Tarantino's best, that's so hard, because it's like, well, what constitutes as best, right? Like, is it the most actiony? Is it the most technical and difficult to film? I almost argue like this film is like probably his most filmmakery. Like, this is like his most straight-laced form of filmmaking before all shit breaks loose at the end. You know what I mean? Even like the journey of Dalton and again, just that journey between going to the 60s and 70s and seeing like a washed up star. Like, all the characters you have to vibe with the characters in order to be invested in what happens. Not only in the background of the Manson stuff, but like legitimately Dalton's career and how he does have this pal in Cliff Booth, which that camaraderie is goals. You know what I mean? And even the replacement of, like, for instance, like Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen, and they did the whole body swapping with Rick Dalton. It's such a cool, because I'm such a fan of like the Hollywood Pursuit, and I love even him being on set with like that little girl, and that little girl gives him a compliment, and he's just like, thanks. Thanks. And that scene of him just freaking out in the trailer, just all of it, right? And I'm only talking about Rick Dalton just because, I mean, you know, that's a big part of the movie. But I love that love letter. I really do. And it is so based on investment into the characters of wanting to see what happens with Cliff going to the ranch, and even like the feel of Strange being on the ranch, and even just the subtlety of the humor. I would argue this is like Tarantino's. I don't know. I'd like to imagine he had like a lot of fun just making a movie. I mean, obviously he always makes movies he wants to make, but this is obviously a movie he wanted to make. And I think it shows. I definitely think it shows. I think he delivered a very specific, you either get it or you don't type of movie. That's what I feel.
Well, there's something I'm really curious to hear your opinion about it, DJ, because you're a professional stunt double. So I imagine, like, how did all the like Cliff Booth stuff resonate? Did it feel like very authentic, or like a different era of like stunt doubles, or were there any extra like little details that like really like, you know, it's like, yeah, that's what set culture is like?
No, I'm still able to relate to it, but I'm more of a professional body double than stunt double. But I work very much in tangent with a lot of the stunt community, so I'm still able to like give input on it. Actually, all of it was a reflection of its era. You know, there is a certain synergy between, you know, the Bruce Lee scene and having the stunt actors hang out like that. And don't get me wrong, sets are still like hangouts, but you know, it's like we're at 2023 as we're currently recording this. Like, there's definitely a feel of people who've been in the industry for a long time versus the footing of the industry, if that makes sense. So being able to hang out on sets, having a cigarette, yada, 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 we still haven't reached the height of like Star Wars yet or industry movies like that. Like industry was still making movies that were going to be hit or miss, you know what I mean? So that feel of set life in general was definitely 70s. Like it just or 60s, I should say. It just felt like, oh, this is the purity, if there was such a thing, of like organic set life. You know what I mean? Versus nowadays, everything is very much like every person you meet on set, whether it's the grip, the ads, you kind of feel like they've done it all, or they just worked together too long at this point, or they can talk about when they worked on MacGyver back in the day, or they can talk about like, oh yeah, I went to New Zealand on this one production. Like it's all very much like veterans that have done it versus the rawness of the 60s, if that makes any kind of sense.
Are you saying like it's like people are more used to it now versus the 60s where it seemed like you reached heaven?
Yeah, the 60s where it's very much like it's the again, once upon a time in Hollywood, it's the idea of Hollywood. It's 100%, trying to find a performance, trying to not be washed up because, being on TV is like a step down from being in the movies, but you also don't want to ignore. I mean, again, one of his big successes was finding fame, or Dalton's finding fame in like Italy or overseas. So it is about the sacrifices, the making the working out deals of it, the rawness of it. Where nowadays it's literally, you're hot today, gone tomorrow. Which is why I do appreciate a Tarantino saying he's able to retire on his own terms. Because if you're not, it's like music nowadays. And the reason why I use Jay-Z as an example is like, if you don't announce relevancy, if you don't post something in a week, you're irrelevant. You just are. So I don't know. I just love that journey of like a washed-up actor just trying to find his place in Hollywood, down to the point where, hey, who's my next door neighbor? I've never even met them before. Do you think I could rub elbows? I mean, that I don't know. I like the underdog story, but at the same time, almost pulling the curtain back of the way the industry not really was. So obviously it's going to be stylistic, but the way the industry, a peek into what the industry was at the time. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but hopefully there is like a difference between like background performers and what the superstar is supposed to be. So having Dalton even like fight Bruce Lee was a nice little peek into, you know what, people used to talk a lot of shit back in the day because that's just kind of the way the industry was.
All right.
I do think that like Brad Pitt's like Cliff Booth is like have this effortless cool where like on one hand you'd think that like oh look at this guy going to this trailer behind a movie theater making macaroni and cheese in his little trailer and on a surface level that sounds like the saddest thing in the world, but like he is just this like real sense of contentness that it just feels like, yeah, this is the Sigma life. the
entire time. Why isn't he like he should be living with Dalton, or Dalton should be putting him up someplace. They're that close of a friends, and he needs him that much. I was like, this guy who's this cool, he doesn't need to live in a trailer. I always wanted.
Maybe that's just the way he wanted to live. He didn't want to feel like he was mooching off his boss.
Okay, that makes sense.
Honestly, that wasn't very uncommon back in the day, where you just kind of had that was your version of your entourage. So to get back to like the original question though, as far as it being like Tarantino's best movie, I wouldn't say it's his best movie, but if you appreciate the topic and the subject, I think he did a great job just with the investment of the characters, because you gave a shit about what happened to him. And I'm always a sucker for like good characterization, especially when we live in a day and age where movies are very forgettable and you're not really invested. You're just easily tantalized.
MCU, what?
Oh yeah.
Well, so here's two things I want to kind of bring to the tribunal. One, what do you guys do? You think Rick Dalton? Rick Dalton. Do you think
real quick, sir? You and MJ still have to say like what you guys felt about the movies.
Oh, all right. Do you want to finish that, and then I'll bring up the subject I'm curious to run by you guys.
Yes, please. And then while you're on stage, Isaac, what's your feel of the movie? What was your
I
experience?
thought it was great. I guess my only complaint is I thought it was a little self-indulgent. Like, I don't think you needed like a half an hour of, Leonardo DiCaprio filming the Western pilot. But like the film is like such a sweet energy. I think it gets away. I do think it's mid-tier Tarantino because I do think it is like I think compared to his other films that makes it stand out so much is that the tone is so wildly different from other Tarantino movies. And that is something I always appreciate in an artist or filmmaker, was when they could do something that, doesn't feel like they're trying to say the same sentence in a different way. So I love the fact that this is like a sweet idealized form, and it literally builds nostalgia for something I never had. It reminds me of like growing up in the 90s and watching reruns on TNT, and for this old sort of style of celebrity and Hollywood culture. And I love it that it's not like a behind the music kind of like expo. Because like when you think of like Tarantino, like let's say imagine this movie didn't exist, and it's like Tarantino's making a movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and you imagine like S&M dungeons and weird child sex things and all this like messed up over the top violence things, and this like kind of pulpy violent crime thriller. But instead we get this like very sweet thing with like this lovable goof of a character who you want to succeed, and like the coolest stuntman ever, like the badass who we all wish we were. I think I love that scene. Like we all wish we could like get away with it, where we have just some obnoxious dude cackling as he like cuts the tire of our vehicle, and then we just beat the shit out of him and make him change the tire.
Dude, Cliff Booth is 100% one of those male characters that's like up there for me in terms of, if I had to be like a man's man, Cliff
He
Booth
is cool as hell. And
cool as hell, man.
if you want to like what you're talking about, like nostalgia for things that you aren't actually nostalgic for, I looked up like all these people that they were homaging, and if you want to see who Cliff Booth is pretty much based off of, look up clips for a guy called Billy Jack, and you will see right down to like cadence of how he talks, like, facial expressions and posture, and like this era of like the early 70s cool guys and 60s cool guys. Like I don't explore those eras ever. And I sampled and I was like, oh my god, they were having some fun back then. And these people are like, yeah, so cool. And the nostalgia for stuff that you're not nostalgic for, you get that by osmosis through this movie. And
did Pitt really base that character off Billy Jack? He just kind of struck me as Brad Pitt being Brad Pitt.
It does seem like him, but I mean,
it's like an amalgamation of every character he played in the 90s.
There's a clip of Billy Jack when you watch, you're like, oh wow, maybe Brad Pitt based himself off that guy, because it's freaking on the goddamn nose. Like
I get what you mean though, in terms of like Brad Pitt playing himself, but he's definitely based on what you're talking about. But there's just so many, like Brad Pitt just effortlessly does cool. Like,
oh, yes.
That's the dumbest one-liners where, who are you? The devil. No, that's not it. Just the dumbest like lines where you will throw like a can of food at someone and just start a fight that way, and then get stabbed, and it's fine because I'm high anyways. I don't feel it.
I like cracked up when I saw that guy. I forgot about the can throw where he just throws it and he like implodes the person's face. Like I think of the Brad Pitt is like, or the Cliff Booth is like the ultimate ideal of like he just wants to chill. He's a chill guy, but if you provoke him, he'll step up with it once he has like permission. Once he says like, all right, we agreed to this.
Yep. And just one last thing, because I didn't watch too much of it, but like there's a scene of Billy Jack. He's got a cowboy hat on. He's walking through a park, and like a whole bunch of dudes just come out. They're gonna fight him, and like this boss hog looking guy comes up to him like to say, "Ha, we got you, Billy Jack." And like he like he's doing an impression of Brad Pitt. He goes, "I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the side of my right foot, big hit across the side of like the left of your head. There's not gonna be a damn thing you can do about it." And like it was like how Brad Pitt talks, and sure enough, the guy did it in like whip fast speed, and it was like he was Brad Pitt taking apart the kids in a movie, and I think they even mentioned like that is like who they were trying to reference. But like, yeah, I highly recommend looking up like who they were watching.
Did they mention if Cliff was former military in the movie?
Yeah,
Yes.
they said he was a war hero.
Yeah.
Oh, they did. Okay, yeah. Because I was trying because obviously the way he took apart the 3 kids in Rick's house, like Jesus, that's some special forces training there.
The last thing I'm going to say about that whole sequence is I feel like this was like that living room talk as far as like if you had the opportunity to fuck those kids up who done in Shannon Tate, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? And it was like legitimately that scene was like, oh man, I would whoop their ass, like fuck them up, da 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 da. Yeah, write that down. And like literally, he represented what you would do to those assholes given the opportunity, and that's what happened.
Yeah, made them look like fools, and yeah, that was now with full context. That's beautiful. Isaac, any other things you want to say about the movie, and then MJ, and then we go to your question.
All right. I think that like it gives you nostalgia for something that you never thought you'd be nostalgic for. It's this effortlessly sweet movie from like Leonardo or Rick Dalton bonding with the little method actress girl on set. It's just an incredibly, surprisingly sweet movie, which is not something you'd expect from Tarantino. So I'd still say it's like mid tier, just because the quality of what Tarantino does is so high when he's at his best, but I still think it's an excellent, wonderful movie.
Great bromance. MJ, your feelings and thoughts on the movie?
My feelings are pretty similar to Isaac's. I mean, it's a great mid-tier movie, which would probably be upper tier for basically any other director. That's why it's kind of funny, because I just watched Damien Chazelle's Babylon a couple weeks ago, his 3-hour opus to the end of the silent film era in Hollywood, and yeah, it's almost like Damien Chazelle watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and thought, "Nah, I need to Tarantino this shit up a little more."
Uh-oh.
And
is it good? Because I'm watching it in a couple weeks.
It's another movie with Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie in it. So
I heard mixed things that it's not as good. I've heard it's like a big misfire, even though Damien Chazelle's like kind of like the it guy in like a young
another Oscar darling. Yeah, but it's not as sweet about the halcyon days of Hollywood of yore as Once Upon a Time is, and even the title itself, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, does. Supposed to be Tarantino's tribute to Sergio Leone, who did Once Upon a Time in the West and Once Upon a Time in New York. I don't know. It's a good, solid movie. It doesn't seem to take as many risks that Tarantino is usually known for in all his other movies, and the complete lack of the N-word for the entire runtime of the movie was definitely appreciated. Yeah, it was just a good, solid, sweet movie, like Isaac said, and yeah, I enjoyed it. And like I said previously, it's a solid movie if you take it at face value, but once you actually start reading into all of the references that Tarantino packs into it, you realize that 90% of it is just him going, "Ha, how well do you know my world?"
Well,
and Tarantino originally had started off with the script as a novel he was writing, and then he got a couple of years into the process and realized, "Oh crap, I should make this a screenplay." And it took him 5 years to bring it from that point to where he turned it into a script and started shopping around and started to cast it.
And the book does exist.
Yeah, he did turn it into a book. Well, that's actually a really good segue. So that's what I wanted to bring up. So, how many of you guys do you guys think Cliff Booth killed his wife?
Well, here's a funny thing. I've been reading up on it. It's supposedly an allusion to what happened to Natalie Wood, because Natalie Wood died under mysterious circumstances. She drowned while she was out on a boat with her husband, Richard Wagner, and Wagner was never officially brought up on charges for it. There's a lot of people who think that was Tarantino's allusion to what may have happened with Natalie Wood.
I heard that too. I think he had a hand in it. I think that's part of his mystique. I mean, unfortunately, the way he lives is so modest. He might have went to the deep end. He seemed like the type of dude that, unfortunately, maybe he didn't have a choice in it. I don't know, but I'm going to say yeah.
I'm going to say the answer is yes and no. She was going nuts on him, and to the point where he would love to have done it. Which is why finger on the trigger, gun pointed toward her, and angry enough to do it. But then that you heard the sound effect of that wave hit, and then bam, killed her. so that like if he didn't have that like instinct of wanting to finger on the trigger, just on the 1 second away from doing it, I don't think he would have done it. But I don't think he was crestfallen that the wave made him do it.
So, all right. So, you ready for the definitive answer? Because there is a definitive answer. All right. So, it's revealed in the book. 1, it was a hair trigger. 2, all right. So, so basically, yes, he did kill his Booth. Tarantino gives Billy's death an entire chapter, chapter 10, The Misadventure, but the first sentence is sufficient to settle any debate, at least regarding what happens in the novel. The minute Cliff shot his wife with a shark gun, he knew it was a bad idea. Cliff shot Tears his wife into 2 separate halves, which the remorseful murderer holds together for 7 hours, keeping her alive until medical help arrives. Booth keeps his wife talking to distract her from her injury, and the couple more or less reconcile after having the 7-hour conversation they could never have in life. Then the Coast Guard shows up to try and move Billy off the boat, and she falls apart and dies. Later in the chapter, in an extremely unpleasant passage set in Cliff's mind, the stuntman convinces himself that his wife's death was practically the accident he claimed it was, for the following reasons. 1, it was a hair trigger. 2, it was more instinct than a decision. 3, was it a pull, or was it closer to a twitch? 4, it wasn't like anyone was going to miss Billy Booth. She was a fucking C-word. Did she deserve to be ripped in two? Maybe not. But say without Billy Booth on this earth, the sweet life goes on unabated would be an understatement. Really, only her sister Natalie was upset, and she was an even a bigger fucking C-word than Billy, and she was really only upset for a while. So Cliff carried the guilt, Cliff carried the remorse, and Cliff vowed to do better. What more does society want? The countless numbers of American soldiers he saved by killing Japs were definitely worth one Billy Booth.
Damn.
Can I just say this? Just you reading it, I got goosebumps, man. Like the being able to have that conversation that they couldn't have in whatever 7 years or whatever years or I don't know, man. That was deep.
Yeah, so technically he did murder her, but the sense we get is that like it was kind of an accident, and he was remorseful and regretful, and they had like this like a heart to heart as he tried to keep her alive, but he couldn't, and had the conversation that they couldn't seem to have in life. So, but he did technically kill his wife, but I guess that just sort of makes him like a morally conflicted anti-hero, the person who can do bad things and stand up to it when you need to, for better or worse.
How could Cliff have gotten away with it even without an involuntary manslaughter charge? I mean, they were the only two on the boat. I mean, Jesus. I'm sorry, the shark gun accidentally went off and cut you in half. Like,
yeah.
That you got to read the book too. Like I can't. I don't have an answer for that. I just gave an answer. I just thought that was interesting because all over the internet when the movie came out, did Cliff Booth kill his wife? Does this make this a horrible misogynist movie? If he did, we need to find out about it. And the fact that Tarantino actually gave like a definitive answer after the fact in the book, I find really interesting.
I almost feel better of not knowing because the way that Tarantino did the jump cut away from that. Right as he was thinking about it, and like, okay, there's just enough ambiguity there that you don't hate Cliff for it, but
there's book universe, there's book universe and movie universe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, that's a testament to his filmmaking, though. I mean, he could have laid it out, and he chose to leave it ambiguous like that. So, if anything, that's a testament to, hey, not everybody read the book. Appreciate it this way.
Well, it's probably in the 4.5 hour original cut that Tarantino had of this, and then he had to whittle it down to 2.5 hours.
As a mini series or something, I'd watch the hell out of that.
Well, there was talk of them releasing Once Upon a Time as a two-parter a la Kill Bill, but Tarantino decided he didn't want to do that again.
I kind of agree with that. Like, I feel like it would have been like a two-parter. I feel like is warranted for an epic, not kind of like a hangout slacker movie.
You really have to be invested to want a part two to this. Like the Kill Bill was okay. The revenge isn't resolved. Versus, what are we really looking forward to in a part two to this? Just the continued adventures of Rick Dalton.
Oh, I think like the two parts would have been like will probably be in the middle like of this narrative, but the ending would have still been the same.
No, I get it. But my point is, like, to leave it where, to stretch it that far, to assume that people would wait to, you know what I mean?
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, if it feels complete as is, you really have to be invested to be like, oh man, I really want to see if he makes it, and I want to see what happens with the Manson family. Like, no, tell the story. Let's get there.
You find out the extra hour would have just been them going overseas and Rick doing all the Italian spaghetti westerns that he did.
Yeah,
I think he actually wrote episodes of Bounty Law though, and they're like, if they were thinking about doing them, and I want that. I want more Bounty Law. I would not be against that. How about this?
Sorry, what was your thought?
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask what people thought about the Bruce Lee controversy.
I thought it was. It's so funny how, like, in Tarantino's sweetest movie, he still manages to, like, court controversy.
Piss somebody off. Yeah.
Piss somebody off. And apparently he did do the, like, homework. I don't know, Keith, this is something you have. Like, that, like, Bruce Lee had nothing but contempt for American stuntmen, and he was kind of like...
No. Oh yeah, I did. I've been listening to, like, the podcast with Quentin Tarantino on it and, like, doing a little research. And also want to say, kind of friend of the podcast, I podcasted with Mike Moe, who is Bruce Lee in this movie.
Big shout out to Mike Moe, bro. Big shout out to Mike Moe. He killed it.
Do you know Mike?
Oh, I have an appreciation for Mike. I don't know him like, we've interacted, you know what I mean, at best. But I've always been a fan of his career. I loved him ever since, like, well, it was probably before this, but if for all you Street Fighter heads or fighting game heads, he played Ryu in Joey's Assassin's Fist, which was critically acclaimed. Man, it was probably the closest thing we ever got to a good adaptation of Street Fighter anything. And he's so humble. I don't know, like I don't know as well as you do.
Hey, don't forget about Julia, man. Come on.
Yeah. Wait. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm like we're best friends, but like I think I got to meet him off his first role in a show called Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. I just got lucky enough to friend up with, like, the director Steve Wang and went out to the rap party and I got to meet him, and like it's beautiful seeing, like, a person like that rise, because he's just a guy, just a kid at the time, like, you know, wanting to hit that dream, and he made it all the way to Tarantino, so it's really cool to see. And Yeah, and then like we did, like,
also in Brad Pitt's acceptance speech. Sorry to interrupt, but in Brad Pitt's acceptance speech, he actually gives Mike a huge shout out. And to me, and for me, I'm never this guy because I'm a little desensitized, more than I like to admit. But when he did that, I got goosebumps for him.
Cool.
You know what I mean? Because, like, again, this is such a great role for Brad Pitt. Cooler than cool, humble as fuck. If anybody in the industry who's like, one of the big things about Brad Pitt, if you know anything, is like there's a service called central casting, and a lot of times, a lot of productions will hire their backgrounds and extra work and fill in their scenes from talent from central casting. It's like one of the more obvious stuffs if you're beginning in the industry. I guess Brad Pitt, well, the legend has it Brad Pitt used to use that service, but also back in the day, Brad Pitt used to, like, do, you know, odd jobs. And there was one time where he couldn't really get off. So, like, I guess central casting, it was like this whole thing where basically they fell out. And then supposedly Brad Pitt became Brad Pitt. He did, like, Thelma and Louise, became who he was. And then from then on out, he refused to use central casting just because of, like, the not understanding of that. So the humble beginnings of Brad Pitt's story and his legacy. So for him to be on that stage, getting this award, and you just like, oh, big shout out to Mike Moe, my man Mike Moe. Really, I was over here just like, you know what, man, fuck yeah, Mike. Go ahead, sorry, take it away.
No problem. Yeah, and like I did a podcast with him and another stunt guy, actor Matt Mullins. We did a review for a movie called Ninja, and I have to admit, this is like one of the first times with Mike Moe and Matt Mullins. I was starstruck. It was my worst podcast I've ever done. I'm still embarrassed at the job I did with them. They were professional, but I was stunned because, like, I've seen them on TV and, like, they're nothing but fun. And so yeah, seeing him in the Tarantino movie was just mind blowing. And so for me, at first, I also did Bruce Lee worship. Like, the guy is a god to me. And seeing, like, I don't care who you are, throw Bruce Lee against a truck, and, like, I was just like, no, No, not cool. All right. And I'm a fanboy of Sharon Lee, the daughter of Bruce Lee, and I was with her with like, yeah, F this. But then I started seeing there's like a video by Accented Cinema that went through the breaking down of hey. And I don't think he was talking about Bruce Lee specifically, but like the worship that Hong Kong martial art fans do for their stars. And how he broke down, and just so you know, I'm going to break your heart. No, Jackie Chan does not do all of his own stunts. Right here. He didn't do these stunts.
Yeah,
and
Mm-hmm.
You got to understand, these people are people, and they're normal people. They have flaws and faults, and Bruce Lee himself, God that he is to me. So in Hong Kong, they have a different way about it, where there's more connecting and hitting and fighting and whatnot. But when he came to America, that was just not a thing here. And he didn't try to acclimate people to it. People didn't want to be acclimated to it. There are people who refused to fight with him because he's like, yeah, he's freaking actually kicking me. That's not what we do at all. There's like a guy who was kind of like Cliff Booth that was the only person who would fight with Bruce Lee. They became friends. So yeah, like then going with that kind of context and knowing that Bruce Lee was a blowhard, deservedly, because he's freaking awesome. But showing like the ground level of it, like him on set doing his thing, and like how he did rub stuntmen the wrong way, and seeing him be human about it and even be humbled, just brought like this texture to him, to me, of his human level that I think was warranted. And like he's still Bruce Lee. Like even if he got beat up in this Princeton situation, he still rose up to be one of the greatest stars of all time. But
yeah, that's why I appreciated Tarantino's explanation of it on Rogan's podcast about, like Isaac mentioned, how a lot of American stuntmen, or like you guys are talking about, Lee didn't have much respect for American stuntmen because, they didn't connect, they didn't really actually fight. But the whole thing about the fact that Lee wanted so hard to be a movie star in addition to all the spiritual stuff that he was doing on the side. And, the American machine at that time was like, foreigner, we're not going to let you in, because they were still bent quite a bit against the Asian community actually getting somewhere and being successful in the mainstream. And if I was Bruce Lee, I'd have a massive chip on my shoulder still, too. Mm-hmm. But, the other funny thing about that scene is that little quip that Bruce throws at Brad Pitt, saying, you're kind of pretty for a stunt guy. And then, Pitt's going, well, I try. That was actually a line that was suggested by Burt Reynolds.
Cool.
That's funny. I would love to chime in the Bruce Lee thing, if that's all right with y'all.
Yeah, please.
Dude, so Bruce Lee is iconic. I put Bruce Lee in the same category as far as like Elvis, which, by the way, saw that movie not too long ago. Fucking amazing movie.
And also Austin Butler.
Yeah, exactly that. And shout out to Austin in this role, because I don't look at Austin and be like, oh yeah, he's obviously Elvis, and that dude killed the part. But anyways, so I think even in the stunt community, it's very divisive, because like the legend of Bruce Lee, the legend of Jackie Chan, paves the way for that industry, to the point where hashtag make stunts an Oscar category is still a thing. You know what I mean? Because they really don't get that respect. I mean, half the time it's always the star. I mean, it's always the stars. And we're in 2023, and that still hasn't changed much. I mean, yeah, if you're lucky and if they're humble enough to kind of share the hey shout out, that's great. But they're still not even getting close to what they probably deserve. They're breaking their bones. They're breaking their bodies every single day just to train, just to be ready at all times, just for the call that they may or may not get. It's very dance community in that sense, where your body has an expiration. Some a little bit longer, some a little bit less. But once that's gone, you've sacrificed your best years just to be able to do this stuff, right? So with Jackie Chan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm just kind of dumbstruck. Of all the technical categories they have for the Oscars and the Golden Globes nowadays, they don't have one that's specifically for stunts.
They should.
No, not at all. And it's still a huge. It's still a huge topic for the stunt community because of that lack of not respect, but deserved recognition.
Yeah, recognition. Yeah.
notoriety, deserved recognition, and even deserved pay balance. Because again, unfortunately, they do treat them like backup dancers for you're a dime a dozen. For what one person won't do, another person will. Matter of fact, I think it's funny because at the time of this recording, like one thing circulating is somebody was watching Bad Boys 2 and recognized that Will Smith wasn't driving the fucking car. Like, no shit. But the guy wasn't even close. Like, he was very dark. Didn't have any of Will Smith's feature. But, you know, here he is looking like a badass, just driving the shit off his car. You know what I mean? But that's just it. So with Bruce Lee, the legend of Bruce Lee, which has been done in movies, about biopics, dragging the Bruce Lee story is still a triumph. Not necessarily accurate, but it gave you that glimpse, right? But even with all those movies based on Bruce Lee, the rumors that come out nowadays, it is the legend versus what's realistic. To the point where Michael Jai White, again, another actor / martial artist, that if you know him, you recognize the skill, you recognize the respect. If you don't, okay, he's your OG Spawn. There you go. That's Michael Jai White. And he also played a young Mike Tyson. But even he would say he could probably beat Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I saw that interview. I liked it.
That's because of size difference. But here's the thing: he didn't mean it disrespectfully. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of what it is. Like people saying, like there's also a lot of controversy as far as like some of Bruce Lee's achievements, like the 1-inch punch, how many people were in on it, and to pull the curtain back. And obviously, I'm not an authority on anything, but if you look at some of the stories, it's a lot harder to call out what's real compared to today, because most people aren't willing to go along with the gag. And I totally understand where his daughter's coming from. Maintaining her dad's legacy is everything. But it's like Elvis Presley being Elvis Presley. Like, if you don't understand the phenomenon that was Elvis Presley, like, you don't understand how huge that man is. But now he's very parodied. I mean, he is basically a costume cosplay on the Strip, especially in Las Vegas. But when you pull the curtain back, you realize like he was larger than life, and so was Bruce Lee. And then, like you said, there wasn't really a place for Asian actors or Asian stars, to the point where they had to make him wear a mask for the Green Hornet. So a lot of his skill set, like, yes, he paved the way, and was he giving like these private lessons to these stars? Absolutely. Was he ahead of his time in terms of his philosophy? 100%. Was he a perfect dude? No. Several accounts of him actually, in infidelities. But again, a huge star at the time. Not saying it's right or not, but I'm just saying, not uncommon. But keeping the pureness of his legacy, in terms of his mastery, in terms of being the Sifu of all Sifus, is important. However, he is not above an ass whooping. He is just not. Like, weight class alone, he's not unbeatable, but he is a badass. I mean, Jackie Chan is way more athletic than he will ever be, unfortunately. Like, that's not even a debate at this point. Like, legitimately, they used to call Bruce Lee the 3-kick fighter, because he only was known for being able to deliver 3 kicks, a flying kick and with the same leg, by the way. Jackie Chan in his prime, we're talking about OG drunken master. Man, those stunts alone, like, yeah, eventually he did use some stunt doubles, but in his prime, he was doing a lot of his own shit. There was very little he would not do. And then people forget, in Rush Hour, he was already in his 40s. Like, he was an older dude. So, yeah, he was not doing his own stunts by then. All my ranting is just to say there's a lot of legacy that's important, like, especially with the Bruce Lee foundation, and even like the Presley estate and all that. It's important to maintain that mystique, and of course you don't want to ruin that by any type of challenging of that. So I don't think Tarantino was being blatantly disrespectful. I think he did do his research. I think Bruce Lee was probably a jerk sometimes, and there's definitely been reports about him, like, They've done parodies. Like, there's actually a Street Fighter, not to bring it back to Street Fighter, but there's literally a Street Fighter episode in an anime where like Bei Long, who's based on Bruce Lee, was like, I want a real fight. None of these stuntmans can challenge me. And then he ends up fighting Ken Masters. It's exactly based on Bruce Lee, because it's exactly that, because he was known for it. So I digress. There's the legacy, there's what you hear, there's the importance as far as what he represented, but he's not an unbeatable god. He's just not.
And that was the other thing that Tarantino pointed out in the Rogan podcast, is the fighting styles between Cliff and Bruce, because Bruce was known for being an ass-kicking tournament fighter, whereas Cliff was trained by the military to just kill.
Yeah,
and that's the way he fought, and that's why Tarantino talked about the choreography of the scene of why Cliff let Lee have the first shot. So he knew that he could help Lee build up his confidence with that first shot, and that Lee wouldn't change it up for the second one and try to go after him with the same one. And that's when Cliff changed it up and threw him into the stunt coordinator's wife's car.
But let's keep it real. That throw was realistic. He wasn't a big guy. Like, Bruce Lee was a very slim dude. Even him at his most profile, pushing his chest out, that dude was negative 0% body fat. He was light as a fucking feather. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to be as vascular as Bruce Lee is ever. But he was very skinny. He was a tiny dude.
Well, just quick sidebar. You know that Bruce Lee had to negotiate to make sure he didn't get his ass kicked by Robin, right?
Oh God, I'm glad they did that. I would forgive the universe if I saw that happen.
There was an episode of Batman where they had they crossed over with Green Hornet, and they had Green Hornet and Kato show up, and they were going for the same perp. And at one point in the episode, they have Batman and Robin versus Kato and Green Hornet. And basically, Bruce Lee had to negotiate so that Robin didn't win, and they just fought to a stalemate.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Bruce Lee being human, but no. Robin is not beating Bruce Lee. Thankfully,
what's the metal, Batman? Come on.
Glad that did not happen.
Who was that masked man? I sure got one on him. Gee willikers. No, but I will say this. At the end of the day, I still want to stress this. Nobody else did what Bruce Lee did. I want to stress this. So as much as I'm talking realistically, nobody did what Bruce Lee did. Nobody brought the culture the way BruceLee did. I mean, again, it's a lot less now, but I still have a big love for like legacy and paving the way and things like that, and Bruce Lee philosophically, mentally made Asian actors a lot more threatening, a lot more appealing, a lot more imposing. And without him starting that, not by himself, mind you, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of pavers, but he was so iconic in terms of the Asian community being strong. That's all I got to say.
Well, and let's not forget about the fact that, the Kill Bill Volume 1 is basically a huge level letter to Bruce Lee with the yellow suit.
The yellow jumpsuit.
The yellow jumpsuit. So You can't say that Tarantino has no affection for the guy, and he was just like I'm gonna take you down a peg.
Yeah, but that's like saying no one's an asshole. You know what I'm saying? Like, pick your favorite person, with the exception of maybe like Keanu Reeves at this point. But pick your favorite person, and there's probably an asshole story about him. And Bruce Lee just wasn't an exception. And Bruce Lee definitely compensated for his size. That's all there is to it. A person might be able to throw Bruce Lee. That's all I'm saying.
Two things can be true at the same time. Dude is a legend. Dude was a human. One other Mike Moe story. So I forget, Mike Moe, actually, he's in Wisconsin. He left Hollywood to create a successful dojo in, I think, Waukesha, Wisconsin. So then I forget how he got called back into Hollywood for this role, but he was called to Tarantino's estate to do a reading, and he was one of the first ones to arrive, and he didn't know who else was going to be in the movie. So, to his, Quentin Tarantino just loved seeing, the dawn of surprise on his face as he's all right, who's gonna, oh my God. And, the Brad Pitt walks in, Margot Robbie walks in, I'm forgetting Dalton's real name.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah. And it was just he's the ascended normal guy. Mike Moe was there, and then the bigger stars start walking in, and he's just surrounded by his legends. So that just had to been one of the most beautiful experiences I could ever imagine.
And what's all? Sorry.
No, jump in.
Something. Have any of you guys ever seen Hollywood by fucking Ryan Murphy on Netflix?
No.
I would love to. I like Ryan Murphy.
Do you?
I mean, I definitely. I'll say I loved Ryan Murphy, and he's earned enough goodwill with me. His early stuff, I think he did Nip Tuck.
Yeah, that's what he's famous for. And then American Horror Story and whatnot, and a bunch of.
Yeah. His start was amazing. Then he started annoying me, and then I stopped watching stuff. His first stuff.
He's a super producer, so you cannot deny the man is successful and probably one of the most successful television producers of this current era. But he did a miniseries on Netflix that I kind of hated, which was also kind of Once Upon a Time for Hollywood, called Hollywood, and basically, it's like in the 1940s, it's a fictionalized version of Hollywood, but it's kind of like this idealized version of like, what if Hollywood somehow was more progressive and somehow overcame, sort of like the racist and homophobic stuff that existed in the 1940s and had a more idealized version. And there's like 5 monologue scenes, like Jim Parsons in it, and it's like, we're going to change this town. We're going to make it better. We're not going to stand up to them, but you got to suck my dick.
Oh my god!
I just hated it. It's supposed to be like this. I just think it's interesting to compare it versus like Tarantino's vision of Hollywood, which is like effortlessly cool, showcases the positive aspects, and it just kind of like focuses on all the things that he loved about that era. Versus the other one, which was just kind of like this schmaltzy maudlin rag, which just basically felt like a bunch of theater kids doing like 1940s accents and just going on for like a 4-hour miniseries.
Oof.
Yeah,
so
I
guess I won't be checking out.
I mean, I also will check it out to do my own due diligence. But I mean, unfortunately, I'm sure it's not lost on you, but I mean, unfortunately, that is part of the business, man, or at least has been before cell phones and a lot more accountability on sets. I mean, it's not innocent. It's just not. I mean, a lot of it's nepotism. A lot of it's who you're sleeping with or not sleeping with. I mean, you always hear these stories as far as like these child actors being taken advantage of, let alone young women. Not even saying men, even like men are now stepping up in terms of like, I was, inappropriately proposed to engage in some shit that I'm like, I'm not down with. And the blacklist. Oh, go ahead.
Not that I don't disagree with like those things being depicted. I just thought that like the Hollywood movie or the Hollywood miniseries, they had like there's this thing that like had a tonal whiplash where they had like they give Jim Parsons, he's kind of like supposed to be like the sleazy agent guy, the sleazy gay agent who makes people do sexual favors. But they have like one scene where they're like, I don't know, you're the good guy, you're gonna stick it to the man. But then he's like, let's change the system, but you also have to give me my blowjob. So it was like such a weird total whiplash to go from like,
whoa, Jim Parsons did that.
More inclusive, but also you still got to do it. But we're also, I'm gonna fight the system, and it felt like every other character had that moment. And I just think it's an interesting.
That came from Sheldon.
Yeah, and it came from. I thought it was an interesting contrast of like, the sentimental 1940s Hollywood, which kind of didn't feel like. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts. I don't think it's worth watching. Maybe you can go watch a trailer for it. But if any of you ever do see it out of curiosity, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I can't stand Jim Parsons, so I'm out.
I would definitely highly recommend Nip Tuck, though. That was one of my favorite shows of all time.
I do want to get back to Tarantino, but like I want to hear why can't you stand Jim Parsons?
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory.
Oh, just simple as that. Just the character.
Too smarmy. I mean, the only other role I saw him in was Hidden Figures. And I like the movie. The guy, it's like watching cardboard act. He doesn't really strike me as having much of a range. It's almost like his Sheldon is the peak of his dramatic abilities. And I'm not going to say he's like the worst actor ever. I'm just not going to make an effort to see anything that he's in.
No, that's more than valid. Everyone has different tastes. I'm always curious because I have like my impression as far as what constitutes as good acting versus strong actor versus that person's good for certain types. You know what I mean? I think Jim is actually a good actor. I don't think he's done anything that's ever challenged his range. Like, case in point, it's not always easy to memorize your lines. You would think like it's a no-brainer to like, hey, read the things, regurgitate it. It's not as easy as you think. I do think he has a very niche presence on screen. It's almost like, I'll tell you what, I'll take Jim over like Michael Cera. What's his name? The Dweeby
Michael Cera.
Michael Cera.
Yeah, I'll take Jim over him any day.
I'll give you that. Yeah, Michael Cera plays the same character anything he does.
Every fucking thing he does. Like, not even close to like range. But I can see, but Jim, on the other hand, he just hasn't done anything with that range, but like, I don't know, but I digress. So back to Tarantino.
Well, speaking I love that scene where Rick Dalton is like memorizing his lines in the pool. I think that was like a major part in like kind of like selling you on the fact that like you wanted him to succeed. The fact that you actually see him doing the work. He's kind of doing it in a booby way, but he's still trying. I assume that has to be a historically accurate detail. That like recording record recorders is what actors had available to them, and that was like a common practice for studying your lines before going to set.
I love the simplicity of Dalton because he is relatable, even if you've never been in his shoes. Like, it is legitimate. And let's just give a big shout out to the flamethrower. I mean, come on, the fact that happened at all, the fact that was screenplayed and then he goes for the flamethrower, and that fucking happened, and you're like, there's my Tarantino-ness, because why the fuck not? Why the fuck not? This is fucking awesome. So, dude, so the relatability, just like being excited, like, oh. There's me right there. That's me coming up. Like, he is relatable. You want a bro like Cliff. Like, every character, like, you kind of just got it. And that's the investment, and that's the beauty of this type of film, because it's not for everyone. Kill Bill has something for everyone. Pulp Fiction has a little bit something for everyone. Even Inglourious Basterds has kind of something for everyone. This is very specific to, like, you either get it or you don't. In my opinion.
I agree. This is like very love of Hollywood and filmmaking. And then like this movie, apparently like one of the biggest inspirations was being on it during Inglourious Basterds. He didn't say which actor it was, but there was an actor who had his own stuntman for several years, and he insisted this guy needs to be here with me for this movie. And something was like they're like closing in on the end of like both their careers or something like that, and that was his inspiration to do these two characters.
That's a great little touch of the bond between a stuntman and his actor, and just being like.
I was reading that was actually supposed to be another allusion to Burt Reynolds, because it was widely thought that Tarantino based the relationship between Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth on Burt Reynolds' relationship with. What the hell's his name? Hal Needham, his longtime stuntman, who actually did live with him. And
cool.
Hal Needham actually was living with Reynolds for about 12 years, and while he was living with Reynolds, he wrote a little script called Smoking the Bandit.
Oh, yes.
And then Needham and Reynolds said he would do the movie, but he insisted that he'd only do it if Needham was allowed to direct. And that's what helped launch Needham's directing career after that.
And honestly, sorry.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. That's what kind of one of the trippiest things about researching a lot of this behind the movie is that Tarantino had a lot of Reynoldsisms that were crammed into this movie. He was going to have
Reynolds was going to be in.
He's supposed to be the ranch owner.
Yeah, George Spahn. Yeah, then Reynolds died right before they were going to start filming, so they filled the role with Bruce Dern. And in the past movies like Inglourious Basterds and Kill Bill, Tarantino had used bits of score from one of Reynolds' old movies that Tarantino loves called White Lightning. And even the 14 Fists of McCluskey, the movie that Rick learned how to use the flamethrower in, the McCluskey was a reference to Burt Reynolds' character's name from White Lightning.
Interesting. What I was going to say is that art form, is in terms of that type of stuntman or body double loyalty, even stand-in, that's a lost art nowadays. I'm not saying no celebrity does it or working actor does it, because again, I argue like the word celebrity is dying and almost non-existent. But I was on a Will Smith set. Actually, it was Hancock, and it was his stand-in, not even like stunt double. It was like just his stand-in. Where, mind you, at this point, Hancock, he's done Bad Boys, Independence Day, like he's a star. You know what I'm saying? So, but his stand-in got paid so well that he drops everything to be on set. And Will Smith specifically asks him to be on set no matter what. And that's not common nowadays because, again, dime a dozen doesn't have... You don't have to look like the actor, but it always helps. It's always preferred. But a lot of productions don't care anymore because that's like resources and money that you don't have to spend on that. But this guy had Will Smith's mannerisms to the point where you're just like, oh, you just pretend to be Will Smith on your off time. That's just who you are now. You know what I mean? Like the way he chewed his gum, the way he walked, even like his speech pattern changed, and he even said like, "Yeah, man, I've been doing this for years." To the point where Big Willie, hit me up, and every time he need me, I'll be all set. You know what I mean? Oh fuck! What the hell is happening?
After you describe what body doubles were, now I see it. In the Ant-Man movie that we'll be talking about in the geek section, you can tell that Bill Murray isn't actually there with the rest of the actors, and then like every time you see the back of not Kathleen Turner, Michelle Pfeiffer. Every time you see the back of Michelle Pfeiffer, I can tell now that you said it, that they have body doubles, and it's funny. I can see it now.
Yeah, the curtain pull back on that one's kind of interesting because there's a lot of movies where actors, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's enough movies where actors don't necessarily get along with the other actors, so they won't be in the same scene with them. And the most popular one is because it's so obvious, but also if you don't know, then you
and Vin Diesel.
Yeah, The Rock and Vin Diesel, like whatever, Fate of the Eight. I mean, man, I know a couple of people who worked on that set, and they're just like, yeah, they hated each other.
The Rocket. Oh, do you know how many stories? I like made a video talking about The Rock and Vin Diesel's feud, and I'm just kind of curious if my instincts are like right on the money, or like what details you have.
Oh, I got to check it out. So without even knowing that, like, it's just that. I mean, again, it's such a dog-eat-dog industry because Vin Diesel was a star first. Like Vin Diesel, people forget like Vin Diesel's not as. Because I call it the Picasso effect. Like, you get so good or so famous, you get known for a specific type of actor. You know what I mean? It's like, and the reason why I call it the Picasso effect is like Picasso's like foundation of artistry is actually realism, but his most successful work is the one that he looks like he drew with his dick. You know what I mean? Like it's just crazy, abstract, and were you blind or were you drunk? But it was the credibility of him being an artist first that let people know, like, no, this speaks to me because this guy's so talented. He doesn't have to do it this way. He's doing it this way because of art. You know what I mean? So
I'm just curious which one he drew with his dick.
I'll get back to you. But that's my point. People forget that Vin Diesel is actually an actor. Like he's done stuff. You know what I mean? Like where before he was ever Toretto. He is way more than Fast and Furious. I mean, people forget that he was in fucking Saving Private Ryan. You know what I'm saying? And another movies before that, before he became like the stoic, slow talking, Brian, you know family. What? Let's get the team together for the family. But before that, he was actually a good actor. So my point is, when you have the ego between Vin Diesel, who again arguably did pave the way for modern day action stars. And then you have somebody like The Rock. But here's the thing about Vin Diesel. I mean, again, this is going to be one of those podcasts where they'll drag it back up and just like DJ Wedges. But like legitimately, everybody doesn't always show up to set on time. Sometimes they show up a little bit, under the influence or whatever. Professionalism is not a universal trait. I mean, especially when you are first on the bill. You know what I'm saying? And then The Rock is very much, I wake up at 5:00 and then I eat trucks for breakfast and then I shit diamonds for, be great. Don't stop. I told you. Yeah, let's
what
get
was
it,
that
guys.
famous thing he did on TikTok or like Twitter or Instagram where it's like, the gate was broken in my house, but people depend on me. The sets depend on me. All these 100 workers are, so I use my strength and I rip the gate off. I don't care if I have to.
Nothing's going to stop me. You have to fucking hold me back. You know what? I know it's on my back, and no, I'm not going to fail anyone because I'm not going to fail myself. Yeah, I get it.
A fun thing that Isaac points out in his video is, once again, how human everyone is, and how, like, Vin Diesel, he's a legit actor, but unfortunately for him, quote-unquote unfortunately for him, now he's only known for doing Picasso paintings in Fast and Furious. Meanwhile, The Rock gets to do any genre he wants to, and is just, can make him feel intimidated when he should be the star, and I guess
there's a reason for that though. Like honestly, like The Rock was very smart, and whether it's by chance or by circumstances, it's like The Rock's wife has her hands in a lot lot of shit. Mm-hmm. So what's the name of it? Like $9 production,
$7, right?
$7 or something like that, and that's supposed to be like a reflection of how much money he had in his pocket before getting into the industry. But that's just it. their production team is that influential that he can do that. I mean, arguably, you couldn't tell me like three of the Rock's like fucking character names in anything, like outside of Scorpion King, and when his name is not in the fucking title, and Black Adam doesn't count because it was the Rock with superpowers. But you couldn't tell me right now three fucking characters. Like, what was his name in fucking Rampage? You don't know. You don't.
Or San Andreas or Skyscraper.
Yeah. Like, you barely know his name from fucking Fast and Furious. That's because there's a fucking spin-off on this shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's my point. Like, it's not like in Jumanji, like, yeah, they say his name enough, and that's because Jumanji is honestly pretty awesome. Like, Dr. Gladstone or whatever. But that's just it. You don't have to do much after a certain point, but his production team is impeccable. So you're right. Actors who get, like, again, they into their pocket Picasso-ness. But like The Rock can do whatever the fuck he wants because he was brilliant on the back end.
He did a lot of. He was just really smarter versus poor Vin Diesel, who I kind of feel sympathetic towards because like he tried to be Bloodshot. He tried to launch that like D&D character, the Last Witch Hunter. He's thrown so many things to like show that like I'm a movie star. People still come for me, but nothing's ever quite clicked the same way as the Fast and the Furious does. So it makes sort of sense, like being jealous of The Rock and having him. Has this that when technically he brought him into that family, well, even though The Rock doesn't need Fast and Furious anymore.
But also, The Rock is he's so non-nonsense. I mean, he's so nonsense. Not nonsense. Yeah, The Rock is
no nonsense.
Yeah, So you have to understand. So The Rock is like Mr. I do show up on time. Let's get this done. So Vin Diesel's hating on him wasn't like him hating on him because of like alpha male mentality. It was just more like, who are you to challenge my authority? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it was more on that end where everybody's there to work. And people kind of just say, of course, you're top bill Vin Diesel for Fast and Furious. Also, shout out to the pacifier. So he did try. But that's just it. When you have a certain work ethic, not everybody in the industry has the same work ethic, and for some people, it's like, it's not a big deal. But the days of being that megalomaniac star, you can barely keep anything under wraps on set anymore because of cell phones, because of technology. Like, even if you wanted to have like a celebrity meltdown, you might just cancel yourself. You know what I mean?
Or you as a skit on Family Guy, like Christian Bale did.
That's exactly the point. Christian Bale's freak out was like the beginning of the end, because that was, it really was. It was the beginning of the end, and for better and for worse, in the sense of like, well, obviously more for better, because obviously that shouldn't be a thing. But people who have never been on sets will never understand how stressful like fucking sets are. It is long hours. You either have something to do or you have nothing to do. People are cranky. They've been there since the ass crack of dawn, even before that. They might have did like a 13-hour shoot the day before. You have to move everything, yada, yada, yada. So when people are late or people are quote unquote unprofessional or people fuck up your vibe or fuck up your flow, because not only you think as an actor, you just go there and do your lines. Yeah, that's what you get paid for, of course. But depending on the director, when you have your shot, you don't want to waste any possibility where you're just like, oh, I feel good, I'm doing my lines, and it was fucking ruined because this guy ruined it. Now, does that excuse his attitude in terms of, don't you fucking rock in my life? No, da-da-da-da-da. No, not necessarily. But that life is fucking stressful. I mean, some are obviously easier than others because it's less technically involved, or it's just a better vibe or better content or just easier
or
content.
More money.
But the big... More money, but the big blockbuster ones that requires everything to be a certain kind of way. Oh yeah, dude! Like set life it's fun. It's definitely part of it. It's the goal. It's what we're here for. But man, it is stressful. So
maybe, and they don't have all the professionalism that Rick Dalton had to just wait till he got back to his trailer and then lose his shit.
Exactly. Exactly. Shout out to Rick Dalton. We could all learn a lot from that.
Yeah, I experienced it only once. There's a movie shot in Colgate, Wisconsin, and I've always had they did this thing where they're trying to do like this one long shot, and the sun was killing everybody. We're doing like a mock Woodstock, and there's like hundreds of people out there, and everyone was dying the entire day just so some people in the far distance could get their one shot done. And yeah, I can imagine if a star decided to show up late, like how many days that would just the anger and the frustration I can imagine. But yeah, every time I see a one shot done, I'm like, oh wow, like on a huger scale, like that's gotta be even like much harder. And anyway, yeah.
Well, one thing I also kind of want to bring up relating to actors and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Does anyone here have any interesting thoughts about the Simon Liu? Well, Tarantino said that there's no more movie stars, and it's perfectly in line. And he mentioned, the guy we love to talk about, Anthony Mack, talking about how movie stars are practically dead.
Yeah.
And then Simon Liu, oh God, and he's just becoming so. I just wish someone would take away his Twitter. He's like, I headlined in a $400 million Marvel movie, and as much as I'm grateful for the previous Hollywood, it was hell of a racist. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, how can you like not understand the fucking message? Like, it's great that you're in this big movie, but the whole point is nobody went to see the movie. They went for the Marvel brand, not because it was a Simon Liu thing.
Yeah. Simu.
Simu Liu.
Simu.
My apologies.
Yeah. I have a my bad. Whoever wants to go first, I talk a lot. We all know this. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, you first.
I'll just say this: I get both sides, man. I do. I do feel like his mic probably should be taken away, and it should probably go through a little bit more PR revisions. But both points are strong. I'm on the train as far as what was the quote? That celebrities aren't a thing, or superstars.
Movie stars don't exist anymore.
Movie stars don't exist. Yeah, and it's even
You still there?
Cutting out for us.
Oh no, did we lose DJ?
There he is.
Huh?
You cut out there.
Oh, I apologize. But even somebody else went on the record. I can't, she was in the last James Bond movie. She's really pretty. I can't remember her name. But even she's like, yeah, celebrity is basically dead. So the point is, yeah, a lot of it is, the trend of going through reboots and only nostalgia to the point where you're only going to see these character types. That's all real. I believe in that. But I will say this, like, for instance, Asian actors, every color of really, but Asian actors specifically, I can understand the defense mechanism to say like, hey, now look at what we're doing because of whatever reason. So I can understand the not blind loyalty, but let's just use that for the sake of argument, just a blind loyalty as far as Marvel did this for us. Just like, again, even like quote unquote black movies, and you could let me know what you feel on this, Keith. The fact that we even have to say black movies in itself is its own point of contention. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like movies that happen to have black people. But when you say something like Black Panther, the very first Black Panther, how exciting was that? Well, at least for me, it was in terms of not only is this a great Marvel movie, well, not without its flaws, mind you, but it was universally like accepted. It did give a certain type of love to the culture. And also, Ryan Coogler is just a fantastic director. You know what I mean? This is before the machine that Marvel is now in terms of like, hey, you have zero. Like, I think he did the best he could with Black Panther 2, period. I don't think it was like his fault. I think he did what he could. I think it's as good as I think Black Panther 2 is as good as it is because of him. And everything that's not good is because what Marvel wanted to do. And like, hey, throw Ironheart in there, throw this in there. By the way, this person's died. The machine. That's not his fault. You know what I mean? He did the best. The whole Tola Khan thing was a beautiful sequence to me. And that was because Ryan Coogler is a good-ass director. But again, back to the Simu Liu thing, it's like I can understand his defense to, hey, look at this now, because for a lot, whether it's Crazy Rich Asians or Shang-Chi, that's another, look at this. We're tipping the scale. We're tipping the pointer. Now, do I think he needs to say it the way he says it? No. I agree. I understand both sides, but I agree that the celebrity or the movie star is a dying breed, a dying concept. Like, we have like maybe Tom Cruise and people in Tom Cruise's caliber, and George Clooney is just like, hey, I'm going.
Well, I'd say when it comes
I don't think George Clooney is a movie star because, like, I mean, he has an incredible amount of prestige, but I could like name a dozen movies that George Clooney's been in that have completely flopped and bombed. Like George Clooney being in your movie does not guarantee gets butts and seats.
It used to.
Not anymore.
That's the point. It used to, but he put himself in a position to not be that anymore, and anything he does now is just for fun. But
he prefers to direct nowadays more anyway. So
Yeah, same thing with Ben Affleck. I mean, you cannot say there's a reason why that Rat Pack was so iconic in the Ocean series. Regardless of those are your type of movies or not, every single person on that Ocean's like, dude, that's the type of role I would die to be in. Just being surrounded by Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, like their chemistry alone, Don Cheadle. You know, these are the greats. These are Bernie Mac at the time, R.I.P. Like, this is when you know you're in good company when you're in that type of mix. You know what I mean? So George Clooney unapologetically has taken himself out of it because he just has, and he's probably smarter for it. I mean, his wife is like a uber successful lawyer or some shit.
My take on the sunset of celebrities is I hope that like what we're seeing is just fluctuations of like trends. Like, you know, like there's a sunset and a sunrise, and the first thing that came to mind was many years ago, I remember hearing some smart old guy say, in the future, everyone will have their own television channel and be their own star. Everyone will have a chance to be a star. And like, I remember at the time going, yeah, right.
He predicted Instagram.
Yeah, at the time, I was so dismissive. TikTok, I was like, that's impossible. Dude, that's impossible. That's never going to happen. You're saying something big just to say something big. And oh, wow. With a phone, anyone really has their own. It really happened, and here we are. But like, what I'm hoping that is going to happen is we're in like the birthing pains of a new era. Because I like my stars, I like seeing larger than life people, and maybe we're just going through some kind of crucible that will once again somehow bring about the people we look up to that, you know, earn it and aren't just like hitting the viral time at the time. So it's happened. It's unfortunate, but I'm hoping this is just a transitional period.
To me,
is
the only
just
way...
a generation speaking, or is that just your own personal preference?
Well, say that again. What was that question?
Is it just like remaining vestiges of our generation, you know, the generation that grew up with being around movie superstars and seeing them all the time and having that fascination, or do you really truly believe that at some point they'll rebound?
I think it's I don't know. I think it's possible. Like, things change. There's cycles. Things come and go.
All right with the cycles, but I mean,
I don't think it's going to happen as long as we have TikTok or something happens with. No, I mean that's serious though. Like, it's literally, even though it's not any one specific thing, you have to ask yourself, why did the concept die in the first place? It's because comment sections will let you know exactly what today's keyboard unfiltered warrior responses is from the consumers, you know, for better and for worse. You know, I've lived long enough for people to say that Eminem's a shitty rapper, and I'm like, God damn you. Like, listen, he doesn't have to be your favorite rapper, but to the point where you're just like, oh yeah, Eminem's a shitty rapper, like, oh, I fucking hate it here. But so that's just it. Like, you
terrible content.
Yeah, but you can go to any comment section of anything, and it'll tell you exactly what the consumer is like right now. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, it's not like I've come across this a lot where, depending on the post, like they'll say something like, "Oh, what's a celebrity? Celebrities are dumb." You know what I mean? Like, nobody's really a celebrity because we're all equal. Da 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 da. And there is some truth to that, and there's credence to that, and that's a healthy thing to acknowledge. But if there is a positive spin on what it means to be a celebrity, quote unquote, let's just say hypothetically. The positive spin is there was at least investment in appreciation. Again, not everything about being a celebrity is positive, but the appreciation of what they represented, if I can make it, you might make it. I live my life in a very specific way because there's not many of us. Now, everyone is traveling, which is great, but everyone is perfect. Everyone has a fat ass, BBLs for the win. And then everyone has a Colgate smile. Everyone has a lot of tracking, and I'm following this person because I want my life to be just like them. So in order for this to even come close to like a reboot, that medium platform has to be curbed, or at least the appreciation has to be shifted, because role models are now people who are basically copy and pasting trends on TikTok. That's what role models are nowadays. They're popular, they're pretty, they're good looking. So that's what we idolize. That's where we put our investment in. Rant over.
I was gonna say, like, one of the biggest quote unquote problems is that the lack of a limit of channels. Like we had celebrities because there was a limit of channels that you would see anybody become a celebrity through. Now that you have millions, yeah, I still my fingers are crossed that somehow we'll crunch back down to the specials. Do we want to do final thoughts on the movie, or do we have any other things in the movie to talk about? Boot.
I think I don't know. It feels like we covered the full gauntlet, and it's a nice, fun appreciation towards a bygone era, and maybe that is the key. It's just the technology, the technology sort of created a limited apparatus where not everyone could be on television, and Pandora's box is kind of, but there is sort of the cream of the crop kind of rises to the surface. So I don't know, the Joel Haver guy has the finances where he's doing comedy sketches, and he does these ambitious animations. The whatchamacallit, the Vizio Pop basically got an animation TV series through her talent alone with the Hell of a Boss and the Has Been Hotel. So it's, and oh god, have you ever heard about the Kane Pixels guy?
No.
So there's this YouTuber I stumbled across, and he'd do these incredible 3D animations where he would basically do this photoreal recreation of Attack on Titan scenes and make it look like vintage World War II footage. And then he did this thing where he brought the Backrooms, which was this kind of creepypasta thing, to life through CGI animations. And
Oh yeah, and he just got the movie deal to turn that into a full length.
Yeah,
that's right.
And the kid's only fucking 17. So talent does, maybe the movie will suck, or maybe he's just a wunderkind who is able to execute on his vision. So, now there's ways for more talent to rise up. I guess it's just a question of, what will the talent do to keep on rising up? Because maybe the thing is there needs to be more movie actor combos like Adam McKay and Will Ferrell, and that's how you kind of build that movie versus I need to take this shitty movie, and when you take that shitty movie, your stature kind of declines, and you lose your movie star status.
I love that. I love that kids are able to do it. I mean, again, Star Wars alone has proven, when they did the whole Luke Skywalker deepfake, and then the kid on YouTube said that was fine, I could do it better, and then they hired him. I love that that's a source. I love that it creates more platforms for talent to be out there. My biggest concern is again, going back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that simplicity of appreciation is all but dead because of the oversaturation. So yes, more job opportunities, but less hype for them. Movies like A Few Good Men will never happen again at anytime soon in terms of appreciation, or Forrest Gump, a journeyful, character-driven movie. Back to you.
Well, all right, maybe that. I think you bring up a really good point, DJ, and maybe that's what's missing in the current era of wild technology is that there's very little opportunity for curation.
Mm-hmm.
And,
sure.
and that sort of curation is how people kind of stand out and rise up to the top versus an endless deluge of everything everywhere all at once.
Whatever
you
want.
People push back saying that you have to question the motives and the ways of those who are actually doing the curation. They actually prefer the open source and wide open Wild West of it.
And you're also not pushed to even try to watch new things. Me and my buddy were talking about this movie with Gregory Hines and Baryshnikov called White Knights, and it's mainly
I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah, it's mainly tap dancing in Russia movie, and I remember for a time it was kind of a big deal. You watch it on HBO, and I watched it as a kid, but now will you ever get a mass audience together that wants to watch guys tap dance? Not happening.
Unless it gets Oscar nominations, probably not.
Yeah.
All right. Then, want to wind down, do our final thoughts on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. DJ, sir, what are your final thoughts on your experience with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I appreciate Tarantino taking the time. I love the fact that Tarantino has his very specific goals. And I don't think he ever... I don't know. You guys can be. I might have to look this up, or maybe you guys can correct me. I don't think he's ever really said I didn't make the movie I wanted to make. I feel like he's always proud, and it always feels like he's come pretty close to hey, that's what I wanted to do.
There's one exception to that. I think Death Proof is the only movie he's ever kind of regretted.
Oh, really?
I'd have to, don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but I feel like I've seen him say that that's his worst movie. And that's because he just wanted to have fun with Robert Rodriguez and redo the Grindhouse experience. And I will say one of my favorite movie experiences was going with my buddy back in college to watch like the 3-hour uninterrupted Grindhouse. We got like 7-Eleven hot dogs and we were just laughing and rioting. There weren't many people in it, but we just had like such a fucking blast with those two movies and the fake trailers.
Oh, the fake trailers were
Those are
fantastic.
I love that.
Thanksgiving coming out in February.
I still wish more had actually been made aside from Machete.
So yeah, I'll keep it short. I love the time capsule aspect of it. It's the movie obviously has been very meaningful, just because of. I think the casting was fantastic too. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the casting and characters completely meshed well. Where I can't even see anybody else playing those parts. Like it had to be Leo and Pitt and Margot to be able to create this driving force. And I love the pull of the curtain just to kind of get a taste, even if it's a stylistic taste of that era. I miss that innocence, quote unquote. I miss the grandiose of it, connecting it to our current conversation of current entertainment. There's definitely a huge separation in that era compared to what we appreciate now. So, not necessarily the most technical Tarantino movie, but I definitely appreciate the time capsule of the 60s and what he loved about it, and also what he would do to the Manson family if he had a chance to kick their ass. So, I think Cliff Booth is the coolest of cool, and shout out to Leo's character. Dalton, just for trying to make it do what it do in Hollywood.
Right on. MJ, final thoughts.
I have to wonder if Tarantino thought about writing this movie after he brought the Eros, because there was that. I don't know if you guys remember that one part where Sharon and Jay are walking in the restaurant, and Sharon looks down the road and says, "Oh, even dirty movies get big premieres."
Yeah.
Yeah, that they were referring to the Eros, which is a theater that Tarantino actually bought and reopened as the New Beverly, and he shows double features downtown in Hollywood now. But I mean, it's just that entire love of Hollywood that Tarantino put into this movie, and you can feel it. And I kind of wish that he would push his book or even any other companions to go with it for anybody who's really interested in Hollywood history, because that's what this movie is. It's just Hollywood history. And it's really fun to see him putting that much of himself into that movie. I mean, it's not his most risque movie, which is why it's kind of like mid-tier for me. It doesn't really push any of the boundaries that he's known to push. Mm-hmm. But it is just, kind of a nice sit in the seat next to him and just have him sit there and point out all the fun stuff that he's enjoyed over the years.
All right. And Isaac, your final thoughts?
I think it's a great piece of Tarantino fiction, something that is very different from the rest of his films, which makes it stand out. Like I said, I think it's like kind of the mid-tier of his filmography, not because it's necessarily bad, just because of how tremendous and influential his other films have been. But I think it is a sweet, wonderful hangout movie that just has a beautiful friendship at its core, makes you longful for, even if you didn't have any sentimentality for the 60s, it makes you sentimental, does playful with history, and is kind of like a weird bookend to the fairy tale of if cinema could kill Hitler, then this is and cinema can kill the antebellum South and slavery and the white plantation, then cinema can kill the darkening era of the 70s and leave that image of the perfect movie star to life.
All right. My final thoughts. I liked how someone also this is maybe an homage to the end of that era, end of this era. And also, someone pointed out how a lot of this was Tarantino doing homage to himself, end of his era, because there's lots of stuff in here that is reused sets from Django Unchained. There's a background that Jackie Brown walked past. So a lot of this is maybe him saying goodbye to Hollywood, the one that he grew up in and loved. I I also want to talk really quickly, like how much I love DiCaprio's performance. Like the layers he hits so quickly and beautifully and perfectly, where he's an actor, playing a character that flips back to the actor so easily. Like, dude, the Bruce Lee of acting up in here, and that always just like takes my breath away when I see how quickly he moves from different characters within the character.
That's why I thought it was kind of funny that Pitt was the only one nominated for acting award for this, and DiCaprio wasn't.
I didn't even think of that. And DiCaprio deserved the nomination on this because that was amazing to watch him do what looked almost effortlessly.
Can I just say one thing as an entertainer, whatever the fuck I am, I don't know what the fuck I am. But as somebody who, thank you, man. I mean, I'm not going to say it, but cool. But one sequence that made me go, damn, that's so good. Besides the whole movie is great. It's well acted, all executed well. It was when he was in character doing on set, and he was doing the Western thing. Mm-hmm. And literally it goes from the movie to him doing his take of it, like doing in between takes. And he even has his insecurities then, where during the take, he was like, no, guys, I want to do it again. I want to do it. Like, no, finish it. All right.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Like that right there was that. I don't even know how to describe the way that impacted me, because that was a level of relatability. If you've had any type of artistic association, whether it's music or needing to be put on the spot or interview or whatever, or just trying to get yourself in that zone, and you're second guessing, and the fact that it was talked through as if it was happening, and it is exactly an actor playing an actor who is doing a take as an actor. It's like, this is fucking brilliant, where he doesn't even think he has it. And he gives him this amazing performance by pushing through, but he also had to get that nudge because he has those insecurities. There's so many nuances and layers to these characters that's just, and then I don't know, that scene alone made me go, that's so fucking good.
Well, that was the other fun thing about the freakout scene in the trailer. DiCaprio ad-libbed that. He had to convince Tarantino to let him do that.
Improv, yep. Yeah, Tarantino wasn't even sure about it, but once again, DiCaprio, dude, is a force to be reckoned with. So, I'll put this in the higher tier of Tarantino stuff. I know it lacks edge, but how much he impacts pop culture and just... Like I said, this was the Tarantino symphony to me. Like, it was like all the stuff I love about him, and just played beautifully on screen, smoothly, almost effortlessly. And I had so much fun. And also, I will always cherish the layered adventure I had of what the fuck is going on here. I had of not knowing who Sharon Tate was or who the Manson family really were. So that was a fun experience to be confused through. So, I think that is it for us on this podcast for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino. DJ, where can we find more of you on the internet or television or movies?
Honestly, right now, you can find me at Instagram only. I don't do the Twitter. I don't really have anything else. So just Instagram at DJ Rivers. There's a number 2 in there somewhere. You'll find it.
All right. Please.
And then right now, I'm currently working on a web series called Power Rangers Bloodline of the Grid with Christopher Cayman Lee, the original. Appreciate you, man. He's the original Andros from the Power Rangers in Space season. This is the sequel series to that cast, so we do have a lot of familiar faces coming back up. Big time jump from the original season, and Chris and I are partners on that, and we're excited to get our 3rd episode up and running, and that's basically what I've been focusing on lately.
Yes. So it is happening. It's confirmed the 3rd episode's happening. Is it done?
It's not done. We just started filming literally a couple of weeks ago. It's one of those things where it's a passion project. It's a project of love. So, and one big difficulty is, like, again, these are the actual actors from the Power Ranger franchise. So a lot of them are doing tours. They're doing appearances. So scheduling is always the thing, and just making sure but we have a great crew. We have a great team. And episode 3 is up and running. We just need to get it done for you guys.
I'm there, dude. Can't wait to see it.
Appreciate
All right.
you, man.
You're welcome. MJ, where can we find more of you on the internet?
I'm on all the socials as MJ3342.
Right on. Lobster Magnet Reviews. Mr. Isaac, where can we find you on the internet?
Find me on YouTube for Lobster Magnet. And I also have a Lobster Magnet on TikTok, which I've been experimenting on. I'm doing a lot more short form content. Seen a lot of growth from that. Although I got a rant for 2 seconds. I'm so pissed. I did like this review where I described on the South Park latest episode, which was about Kanye, and it got taken down for hate speech. And all I fucking do is talk about what happened in the episode. Oh my god, it just drives me insane. On TikTok. It was the weirdest thing, and literally it's just mostly just me recounting things that happened in the episode. But I guess either someone flagged it or maybe the bot flagged it, and it just sucks so much.
Welcome to TikTok. And for a fact, bro, yes, there's algorithms involved, but TikTok, honestly, they have employees that look at this shit, bro. So either somebody was hating on you, or they just didn't feel like they wanted that to get the traction. I hate to tell you this, but it's been all but pretty much confirmed. I think there's documents saying hey, there's ambassadors who approve this shit. So somebody was
fucking weird because if someone fucks with you, it's next to impossible to reach a human and to say, hey, why don't you use some cognitive thing that this is not endorsing Kanye West. This is just a summary of a satire about Kanye West. This is not by any definition hate speech. So obnoxious. I just despise it. These huge companies are God forbid we should pay people to actually be able to do a human review of this. But anyway, looking for me on YouTube. That's where most of my stuff is. Just to type in Lobster Magnet. My SEO is good enough that it'll come up.
Right on. You can find me at Keith Hayward on Twitter, at Keith Justice on Instagram. You can find this podcast and more on popgeeks.com. Thank you all for listening. Once again, Brian Klein, thank you for all your work, and we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy. We are out.